In this edition of Back in History, we take you back in time to the story of the first military coup in Ghana by a group of military officers who worked in collaboration with the police and some persons in the civil service to remove Ghana's first Prime Minister and first President, Dr. Kwame Nkrumah, from office. At the time of the coup, Nkrumah was in faraway Republic of North Vietnam on a state visit and was only informed of the developments at home while there in Vietnam. From that moment on, Nkrumah lost his position and Ghana, the first country in British West Africa to gain independence, went into full military rule and dictatorship. Welcome to this edition of Back in History. Africa, one of the richest continents in the world, was for many years colonized by several European forces. The area now known as Ghana was colonized by Britain. It was known at the time as Gold Coast. The colonial administration of the Gold Coast continued for many years into the late 50s. Through the efforts of nationalists like Dr. Kwame Nkrumah and others, Ghana gained independence in 1957. Nkrumah emerged as the first Prime Minister of the new country. In 1960, the Independence Constitution of Ghana was amended to create the office of President, and Nkrumah became the first President of the country. Nkrumah went on to govern the country and made several policies aimed at laying the needed foundation for the new country. He was loved by many and also hated by many. At the international level, Nkrumah became a voice and a rallying point for renewed calls for the emancipation and grant of independence to the other countries in the African continent that were still under colonial rule and administration. Nkrumah earned a towering image and personality in his home country of Ghana, the entire African continent, and in several parts of the world. Nkrumah went about his work as President of Ghana until the early hours of 24th February 1966, when his administration was toppled in a military coup led by officers in the Ghana Army in collaboration with the police and the civil service. As noted earlier, at the time of the coup, Dr. Kwame Nkrumah was not in Ghana. He was on a state visit to the Democratic Republic of North Vietnam at the invitation of the President Ho Chi Minh. Nkrumah was invited to assist in meetings and discussions towards the resolution of the Vietnam War, which had already taken a toll on Vietnam at the time. Kwame Nkrumah honored the invitation and left Ghana to North Vietnam. He left his government in Ghana under the control of his lieutenant. Like any other person would do, Nkrumah expected to return home soon to resume his duties as president. Nkrumah did not know that his departure from Ghana to North Vietnam was to be his last official journey as president of Ghana. He did not know that a coup had been plotted against him and that the coup plotters only needed an opportunity to strike and remove him from office. He did not know that by leaving Ghana to North Vietnam, a perfect opportunity had been created for the coup plotters to strike. The coup plotters and their collaborators were aware of the president's travel plans and began to take deliberate steps towards the realization of their plan, including the day-to-day movement of troops closer to the seats of power. All these were not known to Dr. Kwame Nkrumah. Dr. Kwame Nkrumah settled in North Vietnam and must have rested after a long journey all the way from Africa. While there, a coup was executed against him and his government. The coup was executed in the early hours of 24th February 1966 and SEM was successful. At about 6 o'clock in the morning, citizens of Ghana woke up to an announcement on radio that Kwame Nkrumah, their president, had been toppled. The announcement was made by Lieutenant Colonel Emmanuel Kotoka in the following words, unquote, "Fellow citizens of Ghana, I have come to inform you that the military in cooperation with the police have taken over the government of Ghana today. The myth surrounding Nkrumah has been broken. The parliament has been dissolved and Kwame Nkrumah has been dismissed from office. All ministers are also dismissed from office. The CPC, Kwame Nkrumah's party, is hereby disbanded with effect from now. It will be illegal for any person to belong to it." End of quote. At that time, communication was not as easy as it is today. There were, for instance, no mobile phones in Africa capable of instant communication between persons from Africa to persons in other continents of the world. So no one in Ghana was able to immediately communicate this development to Nkrumah in faraway North Vietnam. Nkrumah was for several hours oblivious of what had befallen him at home. Communication was done much easily through diplomatic channels, and on this occasion the first person to break the news to Dr. Kwame Nkrumah in North Vietnam was the Chinese ambassador. Nkrumah was in total shock and disbelief, but the information was true. His government had been toppled at home. He was warned not to return to the country as doing so would result in catastrophic consequences, the most obvious being an arrest and detention. From this moment on, Kwame Nkrumah, a towering figure in Africa, the first Prime Minister of Ghana and its first president, did not return to Ghana till his death. He first stayed in Vietnam for 4 days at the instance of his host, who had great compassion for him, but who could not help in the circumstance. While there, he received calls from the president of Guinea, President Sékou Touré, who invited him to fly back to Africa and take residence in Guinea. Nkrumah accepted the invitation and flew into Guinea. On arrival, he was welcomed at the airport with 21-gun salute on the orders of his friend, President Sékou Touré. He was given a good accommodation, and everything that could make him happy was provided for him. He was expected to remain in Guinea to observe the political situation at home and expect a possible recall by his people for him to reclaim his seat. This did not happen, and Kwame Nkrumah did not test power anymore in his country of birth or elsewhere till his death in 1977. While in Guinea, Nkrumah was not a happy man. He was a king without a throne. The thought of the way and manner he was removed from office and the thought of his sacrifices for Ghana, which saw to the grant of independence to the country at a time other countries in Africa were still under colonial rule, were issues that threw him constantly into sadness. He must have regretted his journey to Vietnam, but this was quite late. Analysts have said that if he was in Ghana at the time, the invasion of the seat of power would have been fiercely resisted. Others have said that if he was in Ghana, he would have been killed, as the coup was well planned and prepared for execution at all costs. Nkrumah thus lost his throne, but had his life intact. Like any other state visit, Nkrumah left Ghana for Vietnam in the company of ministers in his cabinet. Not much has, however, been documented on how these ministers returned from Vietnam and where they returned to. Lieutenant Colonel Emmanuel Kotoka. Other reports have stated that he was a Lieutenant General, Brigadier A.A. Arifa, Major General A.A. Okran, Mr. J.W.K. Halley, who was the Inspector General of Police. Several others were also revealed as having played roles in the coup. The coup plotters ruled through a body which they named as, quote, National Liberation Council. The initial members of this council were persons who participated in the coup. Other persons who did not participate in it were equally co-opted into the council for the sake of balance. General Joseph Nkrumah was appointed as the chairman of the National Liberation Council. Some reports have stated that Nkrumah was not part of the coup, that he was only invited by the coup plotters after the coup had been executed to lead the council as chairman and by implication as the new president or head of state of Ghana. The report has it that General Nkrumah was invited by the leader of the coup, Emmanuel Kotoka. Other reports have said that Nkrumah was part of the plot and was in fact the person who was in contact with the external sponsors of the coup. Whatever the truth may be, the fact remains that following the coup that removed President Kwame Nkrumah from office, Lieutenant General Joseph Nkrumah became the successor to the office of the head of state of Ghana and took over the leadership of the country. The new regime was initially greeted with applause from several segments of Ghana. They commenced the administration in earnest and freed all the persons that were detained in prisons during Nkrumah's regime. The man who announced the coup, Lieutenant General Emmanuel Kotoka, became an instant hero and was celebrated by many people. Ghana had fallen completely into military rule, and all democratic institutions and principles were effectively suspended. A year after the coup, precisely on 17th April 1967, another shake-up occurred in Ghana, resulting in the death of the national hero at the time, Lieutenant General Emmanuel Kotoka, the man who announced the removal of Nkrumah. The flagship house, that is the seat of power in Ghana, was invaded by soldiers under the leadership of Lieutenant Samuel Arthur. In that process, General Kotoka was arrested and later murdered and thrown into a ditch on the road to the airport. Following the first military coup of 1966, Ghana was never the same again. It was as though the coup had opened the floodgates for coups. Several other coups took place in the country, and the country remained under military rule and dictatorship for many years, until the country eventually returned to democratic rule. At the time of the coup, Nkrumah's family was in Ghana. Nkrumah was married to an Egyptian lady, Fathia Ritz Nkrumah, with whom they had 3 children, Gamal, Samia, and Seko. The children were quite young, and the political situation in Ghana was considered risky for their continued stay in the country. Nkrumah's wife then took the children to Cairo, where they were raised. During this time, her husband still remained in Guinea. The children grew up to attend schools in other parts of the world and eventually returned to Ghana as adults. Fathia, their mother, remained in Cairo till May 2007, when she passed on at Bauriwi Hospital in Cairo, Egypt. The funeral mass in her honor was held in Coptic Orthodox Cathedral Church by Pope Shenouda III on June 2007, after which her body was flown to Ghana for funeral at the State House as a former First Lady. She was then buried next to her husband at the Kwame Nkrumah Memorial Park. This was an actualization of her lifelong request. Kwame Nkrumah lived in Conakry, Guinea, as the guest of President Sékou Touré for many years. Along the way, he took ill in Guinea in August 1971 and was flown to Bucharest in Romania for medical treatment. He was diagnosed of prostate cancer. In April 1972, he succumbed to the cold hands of death while in the hospital in Romania. at the age of 62. His remains were flown to Guinea, where he was first buried in Conakry in a well-attended state funeral. His grave in Conakry was later opened and his well-embalmed body removed and flown back to Ghana in a special Guinean Air Force plane on 7th July 1972, following a long-drawn diplomatic tussle. The following day, his body was laid in state at the State House in Accra, Ghana, and hundreds and thousands of Ghanaians lined up to pay their last respect to their first Prime Minister and first President. Kwame Nkrumah was then laid to rest in his hometown of Nkrumah in the western region of Ghana. 20 years after, precisely on July 1st, 1992, Nkrumah's body was exhumed again at the request of the government of Ghana and reburied finally at the Kwame Nkrumah Memorial in Accra, Ghana, on the same ground where Nkrumah himself made the historic declaration of Ghana's independence in 1957. The first military coup in Ghana had long been executed, but its impact on the socio-political history of Ghana shall remain in the history books of Africa and the world for many more years to come. Many thanks for watching this episode of Back in History, and do remember to subscribe to the channel or follow the page for regular notifications on every new video.